Welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we are talking with Agni Sarkar about all things cyber and cyber attacks. Agni, great first segment there. I swear you're going to turn me into a cyber resilience person eventually. There was lots of great information there.
That's the intent. I really need to do that.
Good luck. Good luck. Um, Based on some of the things that you had in the first segment, I could almost hear some cyber professionals having a bit of a heart attack when you say we may no longer need to shut down whole networks. Now, what did you mean by that?
So when you do something like micro-segmentation, what are you doing? You're dividing the enterprise, be it IT, be it industrial networks, be it the cloud, it doesn't really matter. You have a digital footprint and you're now dividing that into micro-segments. Let's assume for a moment that you do divide them all in 26 microsegments, all letters of the alphabet. What does that mean? That means the cyber attack can happen in any microsegment, or maybe any two microsegments, any three microsegments, because those are the ones that are exposed. And you know very well now which are the microsegments where you have critical assets. You also know, and that's what something you need to do, it's called cyber defense modeling. If you're able to do that, then you also know where can you actually interrupt an attack. Because you know you've got zones and you've got conduits between zones. Not all zones talk to all zones. That's how you design your enterprise. So if you know this much, it means the moment an attack happens, and we discussed that in the previous segment as to how an attacker would get revealed, right? So the moment an attack happens in a microsegment, you now have the knowledge to disconnect that attacked microsegment, or rather, the way I call it is the affected microsegment from the rest of the unaffected part. That's what a security operations center can do immediately, in minutes, if not in seconds, because they still need to know where the attack has happened. So if they're able to do that, then that means that the large other part of the organization is now still unaffected. So you have a small affected part.
So does that mean the users, let's say between you and I, my segment is cut off or isolated, so I can't work, but yours isn't, and you're able to work as though nothing has happened,
Nothing
right?
happened.
Okay.
Absolutely. So to your point, that means now you don't need to shut down the organization. You just need to shut down that part. I'll give you an example. And this is something that I told some people some time ago. Oil and gas companies. Oil and gas companies have upstream, midstream, and downstream businesses, right? And if you're thinking like a business continuity professional, then what you're saying is if there's a cyber attack in any of these, so there are different companies and they operate in different ways. Some companies work upstream, midstream, some do midstream, upstream, midstream, downstream, some do only midstream. It depends on where they're working, what that business model is. Assume a company which is working in the upstream area, which is oil rigs and drilling and all that, right? And they get attacked. The first reaction is shut down. So you would hear a message that goes out in the news media that says, we had an unprecedented cyber attack. And in order to protect our stakeholder investments and our digital assets, we've shut down our network. But now you don't need to do that. Because you did microsegmentation, now your messaging is going to change to we're an unprecedented cyber attack. Some of our digital systems are affected, but 90% of our organization or 80% of our organization is still available. We continue to work as usual. We have contracted, cyber experts who are working to find out, to look at evidence and forensics to identify the attacker and eliminate them. Now, while this is happening, you bring in your SOC is now by this time would have got hold of the attacker because you've got the ability to understand deviant behavior and you have the ability to direct them to decoys. And that means now you're already ahead of the time cycle. And probably in 1 day or 2 days, maybe in half a day, you come back to normal. because that's your business continuity plan, because you invoke your business continuity plan in the affected area, not in the unaffected area. For the unaffected area, it continues to operate business as usual. So when you do your business impact analysis, and in the US, with the SEC coming up with a requirement that you need to report material impact of a cyber attack in 4 days,
Hmm.
you need to do a material impact analysis. When you do that analysis, you do that analysis with the perception that you want large parts of your enterprise to be unaffected. I was also reading about Alberta's regulation on cyber attacks. They have a similar mechanism. You need to know, you need to declare what parts of your organization got affected. If you've done micro-segmentation in a, you know, in Alberta for gas stations or for, that kind of businesses, you'd be able to tell the authorities, you know what, our digital systems got affected, our billing system got affected, but the rest of our operations continue. We haven't had a shutdown.
But you would still have to understand dependencies, though, wouldn't you? Because if you are able to isolate a small segment, a micro segment, isolate and trap Alex, the bad guy, in there so he can't do any more damage, there could be dependencies even when you isolate that segment that possibly other areas might be impacted, but impacted because they simply can't send Alex a fan. Sorry, can't send Alex a file rather than we can't do anything anymore, right? You even with those dependencies, you can minimize the impact on the rest of the organization so it keeps going.
That's That's exactly what preparing for the unexpected is. That's part of your original design because you need to prepare for everything. You need to look at dependencies. You need to look at suppliers. Now, it could be that you have a supplier, let's say in a retail store, which is picking up, inventory from a distributor. Distributor got attacked, and the distributor got attacked in the place where it hurts most, which is the distribution system. So the retail store is not going to get supplies for some time. Now, this needs to be disclosed to the retail store because the retail store has still got to manage its distribution policies and its shelves and all that, right?
Right.
Now, when you have such a situation, if you have planned it earlier, then you would know when to communicate. If you are a supplier to a retail store, you would know when to communicate, at what time, and when. So the retail store's business is unaffected because even though your distribution system got affected, you're still able to make those deliveries for that day while you combat the attack at your enterprise. Or let's say, for example, hospitals. That's another area. You have heard that hospitals get attacked every day. And
Yeah.
if I'm not wrong, almost every country has some kind of a regulation that says don't depend on the digital alone. You must have capabilities to run a manual process to continue your hospital operations. Now, if you
Yeah.
have that situation and if you get attacked, you would still want your critical systems to continue operating. If you've got micro-segmentation in, if you've got processes that do all those planning, like you said, you need to know what the dependencies are. You need to know what your business impact would be, whether that would be a material impact or not, whether it would impact, the health of an individual or not. I remember some time ago there was an attack on hospitals in the US, Ascension hospitals, if I'm not wrong. They had to turn back ambulances, or was it some other? I forgot the name of the hospital that got attacked. But that hospital turned back ambulances to other hospitals because they couldn't take any more patients. The patient system got paralyzed. That cannot happen. You cannot afford that.
Hmm.
One blood bank got hit. So a blood bank that was shipping out blood every 6 hours, or was it 2 hours? Yes, every 6 hours, was now shipping it out every second day because their automatic blood calculation system or blood sorting system got affected, and now they had to do it manually. Now, this means that the blood on the hospital side got affected. So now they had to do what is called as blood conservation, which means if you have a broken leg and your operation was scheduled that day, it's not going to happen that day. That gets deferred because someone else who's on a life support system needs more blood. He gets priority. That's blood conservation.
Hmm.
These are real life challenges. With cyber now getting more and more digital systems online, these risks will remain. And if we are not prepared for that unexpected day when that cyber attack would happen, you will get affected.
I like how do I say this? You touched on more than just cyber. I like
Yes.
how you brought together the BIA process, the business continuity, as in plans, process. You mentioned crisis management in there and
Yes.
communications and crisis communications,
Yes.
and a slight reference to, you didn't use the word, but the IT disaster recovery plan. So I like how you're getting that all these teams really have to work together to create a proper cyber response plan, and some of them even have to happen before you can create a really strong cyber
Yes.
response plan.
Yes. Actually, I have a framework that's called before, during, and after. And that whole before, during, and after is heavy on the before side. Because if you plan, in your words, if you're preparing for the unexpected, you spend time and effort in preparing for the unexpected. When the unexpected happens, you have a very short time window and you execute playbooks on time. You build playbooks, you build models, and you prepare for that day when it happens. Now, you and I know very well, no matter what you prepare, that day when things go wrong, they may not be as
Yeah.
per what you prepared. But your preparation will tell you that if this does not match, then it doesn't match one playbook, it matches two playbooks. Let's execute both of them. Or it matches, 50% of one playbook, but at least 50% I can get done. So when you're preparing for the unexpected, it's an investment that is made correct because it helps you for that day when things go wrong and you are far faster than your competition to get out and get things in place and combat that cyber attack. And the third part, which is after, is something that we've known always. Anybody who knows ISO standards knows that after a cyber attack, you just need to go back and work on what you did. You need to make it better and better and better every time. You need to evolve. So you anticipate an attack, you contain the attack, and then you evolve both abilities to anticipate and contain. I also have two parameters that I talk about that board should focus on. Number one, what is the maximum acceptable material impact that they will consider for the purpose of doing certain business? So let's say there is somebody who's trying to do business in biogas, right? And they are investing in building digesters across the world in many places, or they're selling carbon credits to a larger company. They're a supplier in between. In order to do that, you need some digitization that you're doing now. And as the board, you need to take a call. Okay, for the purpose of this business, it's going to earn us X amount of dollars as profit. How much will I be ready to stand losses? How much losses am I willing to accept for that day when I get hit? That's number one. The second parameter is how much of my organization do I want to be available as viable business? I call it as the minimum viable digital business, which means very similar, like in the business continuity world. That's the minimum that you want to work. Now,
Mhm.
in reality, your maximum acceptable material impact, maybe let's say, is $100,000, and your minimum viable digital business begins from 60%, but your effort is to improve that every year because there is no book that has been written yet. And I know no one can probably write that book that says, this is the material impact you should accept. There is no book about it because it's all a calculation that goes on between the CFO, the CISO, the CEO, and the board.
Right.
But you need to fixate somewhere. This is how much I'm going to accept. And whatever you're going to accept, now you need to invest to build that capability, to prepare for that unexpected cyber attack. Because we all know a black swan that is something that you're not prepared for.
Yeah.
You ignored it. That's a risk. You said, we're going to accept that risk, right? So that's how it is. Now, if you know what your minimum viable business is, and if you're able to increase the minimum viable digital business by acting after a cyber attack and improving your abilities to do and preparing for your abilities to anticipate and to contain, it means you're going to get better and better each year. You will learn how to contain your investments. You learn how to manage and balance that risk versus expense that you need to do today.
Right. And if you accept the risk, then you have to accept the impact that potentially comes with that risk. And then that
Absolutely.
leads to, as you were talking about, what's the tolerance level that you've got? How much are you willing to tolerate losing? $1 million, $10 million? If you're $100 million business, well, maybe, $1 million is, yeah, that's fine. But yeah, let's face it, most businesses are small to medium businesses, and $1 million is a lot, and they may not want to accept that risk.
We used to call it contingencies.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We still do. We still do.
Yeah, we still, yes, yes.
Why don't we end our second segment here? Because I know, more things we want to touch on. We're talking today with Agni Sarkar about cyber and cyber resilience and some really interesting viewpoints and details that I think, and I hope, a lot of people listening are going to take back with them and have a look. So we'll be right back.